So for our last Lex talk, we've got Ilya Davidson. You want to come on up? Ilya is a machine learning engineer and researcher whose work bridges computational methods and legal institutions. She's affiliated with CodeX. She's going to talk about career advancements in the federal courts and the results of a large-scale analysis of elite credentials and competence. So let's welcome her up.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. My name is Ilya Davidson. It's great seeing everybody here. What I loved about today, and I hope you guys as well, is hearing about how we're using AI to build the future of law. So smarter contracts, better reasoning, expert systems, and I'd like to come at this from a slightly different angle. So instead of using AI to build legal systems, I like to talk about using AI to map out the legal system that we already have. So by unveiling new truths in the data that previously we were unable to see. More specifically, a very important mechanism, which is who gets to be a federal judge and why. Because every single year, a small number of district judges get elevated to the appeals courts. There you go. And with this promotion, they gain the power to set binding legal precedent for millions of future cases. And no one really explains this decision, and no one really published the criteria. And my research has been trying to reverse engineer that decision with the use of AI. There we go. So this is, by the way, also the law seen from a computer scientist point of view, so bear with me here. But to understand why this matters, let's consider what a promotion actually is, or an elevation. So an appellate judge doesn't just resolve individual disputes, they set the legal precedent that binds all of the courts within their circuit. And because federal judges, they serve for life, that means that one promotion can shape American law for about 3 decades. And we're focusing on this specific type of elevation. Of course, there's multiple career trajectories within the system, but going from a district judge to an appellate judge, you're really well documented. And from a computer scientist point of view, it's really nice to map out your career in this way. So that's why we're focusing on this specific promotion. And I've tried to map out the selection criteria here. Basically, a vacancy opens, after which the president nominates a candidate. Then there's an FBI background investigation, and then the American Bar Association qualifies you as well qualified, qualified to not qualified, after which the Senate confirms. And I have a quote here on the screen, so it'll just be right there, that there's no real professional requirements or training prerequisites, nothing that we can really see here. So the process is pretty opaque for a pretty important decision. Now, we're not the first ones to ask ourselves this question. Researchers have been trying to answer this for decades. And we did learn something important, which is that politics matters a lot, which we know. But the picture stays pretty blurry beyond that point. One influential paper by Troy Galati and Posner, they look at promotions from 2001 and 2012 and can't really significantly show that competence matters at all in this equation. And in the last slide, we saw that only the ABA rating is really the only formal merit checkpoint. So that kind of begs the question, does competence matter in this decision at all? But there was another reason that we can't fully rule out, which is that we just don't have enough data to see this. So what changed this? Data availability and our ability to process it. So with the use of AI and natural language processing, we've been able to map out 3 different data sources altogether. And Robert gave a quick sneak peek on that, so thank you for that. But we're using the Federal Judicial Center to get data on judge biographies. We have appointment dates, circuit assignments, and thousands of opinions from Court Listener, but also the Case Law Access Project. Now, these are not the only opinions that are available online. There's millions, but these are the ones that we've been able to map together through natural language processing, so we can see from each district judge who were the judges who were on the appeals panel once the cases got reversed, for example. And the result is 36,000 judge years, where we really see per year, per judge, time-varying features, such as the reversal rates, which is how often your cases get overturned or reversed once they get appealed, but also citation centrality, so how often are your cases cited by other influential cases, and productivity, so how often are you outputting cases. And this gives us a really good framework to predict promotions in that sense. And what I'm trying to say with this slide is that this simply wasn't possible 3 years ago. This is all because of these new technologies.
Right.
So our first finding confirms what we already know, of course, is that politics matters a lot. not only a lot, but about 800% is what your increase is in promotion odds if you're from the same party as the sitting president. We see this more as a gate system, so of course we know this, but we see it more not to be evaluated the same as the other factors, but that politics open the gates, and then once you're through it, you get evaluated on merit. So it's a two-step process here. So this is where our skill pays off, so interesting things come to light. So as you see here, the reversal rates, so this is how often you get overturned once your cases get appealed, they negatively impact your chances of promotion. Secondly is the citation centrality. So as a judge, how often you're getting cited by other influential cases. That increases your promotion odds about 26%. Then thirdly is your productivity. So indeed, the more often you produce output, the higher chances of promotion. And this isn't that the world changed. That's not the reason why we see different results than previous work. But it's just that with this new technology, now all of a sudden we're able to unveil these movements, this signal. So these are some quite interesting parts that come from having this data. It's that you can kind of play around with and see other effects emerge as well. So for example, once you have this data set, you can separate it by administration. And one finding here is that we see that under Republican presidents, judges who rule more in favor of the government in cases that involve the government have a higher chance of promotion, about 51%. And we see no significant effect under Democrats. And we interpret this as maybe Republican presidents rewarding judges that are a little bit tougher on crime, for example. Secondly, we see that coming from an elite clerkship background, that increases your chances of promotion about 76%. Especially in the first 2 years of your career, we see a really big boost, and that's probably because of the activation of your network, sponsorship, and after that, it just gives you a stable boost throughout. And coming from a top 5 law school also increases your chances of promotion. Thirdly, is that those ABA ratings that we talked about in the beginning, basically the only real formal merit checkpoints through that process, they predict promotion under no specification. So with all this data, if we take account the ABA rating, it gives you no information on whether or not a judge will get promoted or not, whether or not they were well qualified, or even not qualified. All right, so this raises a question about fairness, because we see that reversal rates, they negatively impact your chances of promotion. But one could say that it's not really just a proxy for judicial quality. Of course, there's a component of luck. Because cases get randomly assigned, it might just be that as a district judge, you keep seeing a really tough panel on your cases that get appealed. So because cases are randomly assigned, we can use an instrumental variable approach to really take out this factor out of our reversal rates. And we see that even then, reversal rates do negatively impact your chances of promotion. So for all of its political opacity, we see that presidents do actually screen on this merit. So I want to finish on 3 implications. The first one being for me the most important, which is accountability. So with AI and with this new technique, we can really map out this entire process. We can really reverse engineer decisions that are being made by executives and people in power. And that's really important for accountability. This needs to be known that we can really map this out. Secondly is for the judiciary itself. We can see a real life cycle window of promotion. And I think it's important that we can see this trajectory and we can once again map it out. And thirdly, of course, for this conference, AI and law. Like I said before, this just wasn't possible 3 years ago. And I'm super excited to see what else we can do with these new techniques. And if I've heard anything from this conference, I'm very confident that we can do a lot. So this paper I've made with Professor Sandra Lira and Professor Robert Mahari over there. For anyone interested, I have the QR code on the screen. I didn't know this would be this big, so I don't know if it's even going to work with this QR code, but I'll be roaming around, so just let me know, and thank you so much.
Thank you.